Over to
All right, perfect. Hello, everyone. Um, so we'll still plan for an hour, right? Okay, perfect.
Yes, sir, we'll go for at least an hour. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Bacha Govind from ECE 7 and sir, hello.
Yeah, hello, hi. I lost your video, but that's fine. I'm gonna share my screen for now, so we can get going for now.
So, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
I'm Bacha Govind from ECE 7. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. It's to the audience. If you have any questions to ask, you can please note them somewhere, and we'll have an audience question round after the few questions that we ask. All right. So, without any further ado, we'll turn the time over to Amrit sir. So, please introduce yourself to the audience.
sure. Let me first share my screen and see whether it works or not, okay?
Are you visible to us?
Can you guys see my screen by any chance?
Yes, Amrit, we can see your screen. Go ahead.
All right, perfect. So hello everyone. So we'll do it little different than last time what Anshul did. I heard from Prajita ma'am that there is a new batch also joined this year. So welcome to the new batch. I hope your seniors are treating you well. so uh, basically the intent would be I will just go over my whole story and hopefully I can inspire most of you to kind of achieve your goals too. Specifically, I know computer science, and then of course the E and ECE because those are the people. I was in ECE, so I'll definitely kind of focus more on that. So definitely want to inspire you guys and share my story. Uh, with that, so the first half would be I'll talk basically about my background quickly, and then I will share a few of the tools that I use on day-to-day basis. And my intent here would be not to kind of show you that, there are, of course, very advanced tools and complex, but basically you can achieve a lot of like your, effectiveness and efficiency with simple tools. And most of you may already be knowing these tools. Uh, so I'll go over that and then I will share 5 of my uh, like takeaways with you too. Okay. And then I will open the next second half of the session for more interactive and let you guys ask questions to me. Feel free to stop me anytime. All right. So basically, I'm from Netarhat. It's a small hill station and a very famous school in Jharkhand. So that's where I have spent most of my childhood. And one of the key thing I remember was there was always a scarcity of electricity there, and we used to rely on generator sets, and that used to give us like a light for like couple of hours, and that made a big impact for me, right? So after I completed my 10th, I joined DPS Rachi and completed my 12th there, and of course after that I joined BIT Jaipur, and I'm really proud to be part of BIT family. And as most of you know, that I was actually part of the first batch of, and we graduated in 2008. So it was really special. It was not that well organized at that time, and we had more freedom, and we really made a good good out of it, right? So it was really an amazing experience. I do remember like at that time we used to go out of the campus for the placement, and I think Anshul and I were the first people who got placed in Infosys, and that was at that time very big deal, right? And we were so happy about it. And of course, later on, I joined Reliance Infra instead of Infosys. So I spent 4 years in Reliance Infrastructure Limited. So initially, 2 years I was in field in Hisar. It was a 1200 megawatt power plant, and I worked there as a control and instrumentation engineer. And it was amazing. Like I think that was one of the proudest moment when we started exporting the power out of the plant, and I saw like it made a real difference in people's life. That was really like dream come true for me. Uh, Then I worked for 2 years in Navi Mumbai office of Reliance Infra in the design team. And then I decided though that I want to learn more about this field. And I joined the master's program at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. So my major was, of course, in electrical engineering. My major was in power and energy, and my minor was in control system. During my state university, I also had an opportunity to do internship at Bosch, and they have a special department of energy program where they were kind of researching on like new developing technology. And I had a opportunity to kind of work on the hardware side where I kind of designed the PCB board, designed the flyback converter. And after graduating from Michigan, I got a campus placement in Cummins, and I joined at Cummins in 2014, and I have been there for last 5 years. Initial half of the 5 year, I was in R&D team. So, like I was working in ATS, which is basically automatic transfer switches. If you remember, like, like when the electricity used to go out in your house, you kind of go manually and kind of transfer it to the backup power. So we used to develop like a varied range of advanced ATS technology. So I worked there, and actually, so it was more fun, more experiment. It was kind of a very different experience. And I actually got a couple of patents filed with USPTO. For my work there, it was related to current balancing in ATS and also kind of managing the heat in the automatic transfer switches. Second half of the career was where I'm currently working in the generator side of it, where I kind of work on the, it's kind of different than R&D. It's more like a new product development where you can work on like, it's more like, you can think R&D as more like a upstream, and although the new product development is still upstream, but a little lower than the R&D side of it, where the product that you actually design goes to customers. So it's kind of more, like has more visibility and more on the execution side and less on the experimental side, where you kind of add value and kind of design product. So I kind of work on the electrical hardware integration team, kind of designing different subsystems for the generator set itself. Then 2 years back, I decided to get more exposure on the management side, and I joined University of Minnesota, and I did my master's. I just graduated from there in management and technology. So that's basically about me on personal end. I like to be more outdoor. I like to travel a lot, and I'm also actively involved in many volunteer activity here. So far, so good.
Yeah.
All right.
That's been an incredible journey, sir.
Uh-huh.
So as you just mentioned, you were pursuing MS and you were also working as a senior engineer, senior design engineer at Cummins. So
Yep.
how did you manage studies and job together, given that both the fields that you were involved in were so exhausting? How did you prioritize?
Yeah, and actually, thank you so much for asking that question. And I also had like a few questions list from Aprajita ma'am. So that give me a good idea, and I'm gonna give you guys some tool that I kind of applied. And of course, I always had my priority in my mind that my work comes first. So of course, whenever you try to pursue a new endeavor, like there is always risk and reward involved with it. You kind of try to quantify what is the risk and how do you manage it, right? So a couple of things I will say is, first of all, I try to cut a lot of fat in my system, right? So anything that was irrelevant, for example, if I used to watch TV or spend time on email, so I cut all those fat, right? And then I kind of prioritize, and I always try to focus on three things. I'll talk about that in a second. And second thing that I think I did was I tried to optimize my energy level. What I mean by that is I'm an early riser person. So what I used to do was I used to wake up at 4:30 a.m. when nobody was around me to disturb and nag. and I used to kind of work on my college assignment at that time, and that actually allowed me to be not distracted by minor things in day-to-day life, and I can focus and get more effective and efficient at the same time. And of course, uh, one thing I always try to do is not to spill over. What I mean by that, like when I'm at work, I try to focus and give my best there. And when I'm off work, I try to focus on my studies, and I try to perform best there, right? So I try to kind of manage it in that way and try to keep my priorities always aligned. Other thing that I did was, like always there are trade-offs with any decision you make. And I think the hardest part is to be, mentally and physically be ready to face that situation. So I know that I would be missing several social event and, gathering and other stuff, fun part in my life. And I was willing to make those sacrifices because I really wanted to achieve this thing in my life.
So my next question contains various sub-questions, sir. Please tell us about your typical work day and how many hours do you have to work in a week, given that you're managing so many projects at the same time. And also, if there are any specific seasons in a year that are more tough as compared to the other times, and how would you describe the entire corporate culture?
Yep, sure. So after answering this question, maybe I'll go through my presentation, and that will help clarify some of that. But basically, of course, it's it's a balancing act, right? So as I mentioned, right, it is definitely challenging, and people always see the bright side of it, from the social media, but at the back end, there is a lot of effort that goes in. As a design engineer, the project that I'm working on has a very high visibility and a lot of like time pressure on it too, right? So like kind of managing that becomes challenging. And usually I spend around 40 to 50 hours on my project every week. So you can say around 8 to 10 hours. And again, you have to wear different hats throughout the day. And as I mentioned, like I'm an early riser person, and I have kind of realized like that's where kind of I have the maximum energy, and I am not like, uh, constantly interrupted by firefighting stuff where you are kind of getting some email, high priority items that comes and you need to deal with it. So what I have realized is usually when I go late at work, I have kind of I have to attend a lot of meetings. I have to answer few emails. I have to go to the test cell to resolve any, to do some troubleshooting. So what I have realized is going early at work, that's where I have the maximum energy and I get less interruptions. And that way I can be more productive and I can accomplish the part that I want to complete. And later on, I can focus on the other priority stuff. Other thing that I do as a hack is I try to batch some of the trivial things together. Like if I have to reply to emails, attend some meetings. So those kind of thing, I try to batch it together when I have to initiate myself or I have to reply to somebody else. And few more things that I do is I always try to prioritize. And with that, what I mean is I always try to constantly check with my leadership team, my other people who are my stakeholders, that what is the priority for today and what is the priority from the weekly basis. And I always constantly over communicate, and that way I can kind of always be at the top of the game.
So can you please show us the PPT that you made for us?
Yeah, sure. So let me complete this part, and then we'll open it for more question, and maybe this will answer a few of the question. And again, my goal here is to kind of give you more actionable tools that you can apply every day on your life to be more productive, efficient, and effective. And again, as I mentioned, these are not like very novel tool, but I think that has worked for me. So I definitely want to share these tools and personal learnings with you. All right, so I got a lot of question from you guys about time management, and I don't know if you know, this is a very famous book. It's called 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Person, and it's written by Stephen Covey. And I actually apply this tool on day-to-day basis. So basically, you know, like every day it's kind of a 4-quadrant thing where you have urgent and non-urgent thing, and other side of it is important and non-important, right? So earlier I was kind of mentioning about uh, cutting the fat of my life, right? So those are the activities that takes a lot of your time, but that does not add a lot of value in your life, right? So those are non-important and non-urgent thing, like, you know, watching TV. It may not be adding that much value to your life. And second thing I mentioned about non-important and urgent things like phone calls, replying to email, being on the social network. I try to kind of batch those things. Batching means like, you know, I kind of just dedicate a certain amount rather than just constantly getting interrupted by those things. I want to spend one chunk of time and kind of address all those in that particular time. Important and urgent are like a pressing issue, crisis in your life that you need to address immediately. Like, for example, your bike is broken, you need to fix it, right? So you always have to deal with it. And the whole point here is you want to spend most of your time on important and non-urgent things, right? So these are the things that adds value in your life on short-term and the long-term basis. Like preparation, maybe you are looking for an internship, maybe you are looking for a job, maybe you need to learn a new course, right? What makes sense to you, right? So what I do is like on practical standpoint, and I will urge you all to kind of come with 10 things in your life, right? And then kind of think about like what are the things I want to achieve in next 6 months or 1 year. Then don't start working on those 10 things. Again, fold that paper, bring it down to 5. Fold that paper again, bring it down to 3. And basically at certain time, I just focus on the 3 things that is most important to me. For example, when I was doing my course, I had my priority very clear in my mind that, okay, I need to kind of first prioritize my work at Cummins. And then second priority was to kind of work on my degree for management in technology. And then if there is a priority call, I was 100% clear that, you know, the trade-off is I will get a little bit lower grade in my MOT, but I will provide my quality dedication into my work that I'm doing at Cummins. And one thing I would urge you guys to think about, you know, like think about what things matters to you, what things add value to your life, right? So when you are picking those things, I always remember one of the very popular slogan from a management guru, Peter Drucker, which says like management is doing things right and leadership is doing right things, right? So even if I want to pursue something in my life, I poke hole, I become the devil's advocate and kind of I see like why I should do it, why I care about doing this thing, right? So when you try to do anything, ask yourself 3 times why, and that will keep you going in your life, right? So think about time management in that perspective. So work based on priority rather than time. So time, we all have 24 hours, but when you work from the priority perspective, you will be more effective and efficient in what you're doing. All right. So tool number 2 is SWOT. SWOT is again a very simple tool. It's strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Again, it's a 2x2 matrix, right? So think about in your internal environment, the positive things are your strength, right? And negative things are your weakness. And in environment external to you are the opportunities and threat. How can you align your strength with opportunities, and how can you mitigate the risk that threat present due to your weakness? For an example, if like I remember like when I was at BIT, I was not very good at communication and I was not very confident as well, right? Like I used to hate public speaking at that time. And like I intentionally work a lot to hone that skill and kind of become very, very good at it, right? But at the same time, your focus should be what are your strengths? Maybe you are very good at technical. How can that technical skill be aligned with the opportunity that is around you? Maybe you are very good at circuit design in PCB design, or you are very good at MATLAB or Simulink. And how can you leverage that? What are the opportunity that exist in that field? What are the companies around you that offers internship in that area? So kind of trying to align that thing really helps you to achieve your best. Another thing I learned, like people talk about what is your leadership philosophy, right? And they say like, okay, intelligence, smartness, honesty. Of course, those things really matter. But what I have realized and I learned during MOT was what really makes you a great leader is your emotional intelligence. So be brutally honest with yourself, being self-aware of your emotions, and how do you regulate that emotion is very critical for your success. How can you remain motivated when circumstances are not in your favor, right? So these are three skills that are kind of internal to you, and empathy is and a social skill is kind of more like external to you, right? So how can you understand others perspective? How can you go beyond what you are thinking, and how can you build your network with other people? How can you build that long-term relationship? uh, on the technical side, since you guys are just starting your career or you're on the third year, right? So or second year. So think about track trends, right? So this is one thing in like my field, I always try to keep uh, track of is like what are the technology trends which is kind of pushing the market? What are the market trends which is kind of pulling that technology ahead, right? So for an example, in the uh, energy sector, right? If you think about it, like sustainable energy is kind of growing, right? A lot of you see is wind, solar, and battery technology that is kind of getting more mainstream. At the same time, on top of that, due to this new sources of energy being introduced, there is a need for an energy management system that can kind of coordinate and kind of optimize this hybrid system. There is addition of new sensors. There is a drive to derive some intelligence out of that data, right? And how can you optimize the overall operation of the power system? Uh, I remember like when back in India at that time, there was a lot of like drive for kind of, oh no, we need to build the infrastructure at that time, right? And I remember like there was a lot of like new power plants that were coming there. We called it ultra mega power plants. So the main focus was to build infrastructure. And if you think about from the developing countries' perspective, they already have that energy infrastructure. They are kind of moving towards making it more sustainable and efficient. So, same energy need, but like the application are way different. Like if you think in comparison to India versus US, right? So you need to adapt those technology for particular region. At the same time, you can think about market trends, right? So there are tighter regulation on carbon emission. Uh, there is like more wake to grid application. Electric cars are becoming more popular, right? So it's not only the generation of the electricity, there is a consumption model also there, right? With rise of this all different sources of energy in electric field, you have more concern about the grid security and reliability concerns, right? So kind of think about those things. Maybe you are not in energy sector, you are in semiconductor that you are interested in. Think about what are the technology trends there, what are the market trends there, and how can you kind of align your strength and weakness to match those external environment around you. I have listed a couple of resources as well here. I constantly have subscribed to IEEE. I think you guys also have access to IEEE, right?
So,
Okay.
we have access to IEEE. Students from our college do go for IEEE presentations and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. And I always kind of, like to be aware of what is going in my industry, right? So I have a subscription to IEEE Power and Energy magazine. I have attended a IEEE transmission and distribution seminar that happened in Denver last year. So, I try to be aware of what are the new trends that are coming there, and I think one thing I will say that on my day-to-day basis, I use a lot of codes and standard, right? So at the end of the day, you are designing some product, right? And that product has to meet some international regulatory standard like IEC, UL. UL is what we use in America, right? So there are national electric code. So those are the things I will say I will strongly recommend if you want to remain in technical field, try to learn about some of those standard, right? And because ultimately the product that you want to design has to be safe and user can use with confidence, right? So those product has to be designed based on some applicable codes and standard, and that knowledge would be viable, and that will make you distinct from other people in the market. All right. And the last thing from the tool perspective, I will say is to think system level, right? So uh, the way I think about a car, right? So car is a product, right? But there are some subsystem level thing that goes into there, right? So it's like powertrain, electrical, chassis, body, right? Then you can go into module and component level. In the powertrain, there is engine, transmission, and axle, right? In electrical side, you have power and the vehicle control. So the way I can think about this is a 50,000 view, which is your car, 5,000 view, which is your subsystem level, and module view, which is like your 1,000 level view, right? So usually we start to tend to go into rabbit hole and kind of just think about, oh, I'm working on power side or I'm working on embedded control, right? Think about the product that you are designing. Where is that embedded control is going? It's part of the electrical system. How does that impact the powertrain? How can you control the throttle out of it, right? And think about like how your customer is going to use that product, right? So like think both upward and backward, and that will help you to get that comprehensive understanding in both technical area that you are working and also kind of apply that thing in your life, right? Like think about electrical industry, right? So you have generator side of it where I work, but there is people who work on the transmission side of it, and there are people who work on the distribution side of it. And the skill set that is needed for distribution, where they have to kind of sell and buy electricity, is very different than the skill set that I need to be successful in my area. So kind of developing that system level thinking will definitely help you in long run for sure. All right. Any questions so far before I move into my personal lessons?
So that was so informative, and thank you so much for sharing that presentation with us. So my question is from the tool number 4 that you were talking about, tracking the trends. So since you're in the market and you know the field better, could you please throw some light on what developments on the horizon could affect the future opportunities?
Yeah. So like you're kind of asking about the technology and the industry. Is that?
About the probably next 5 years or more, if you know about that.
Sorry, your voice is breaking. Can you repeat again, please?
About at least next 5 years or something for the future opportunities that we have in the technology technical field.
Okay. yeah, so I think definitely, you know, as I mentioned, that we are moving more towards the decarbonization, right? So people think like it's a step activity and will directly move into from like coal-based power to, let's say, wind or solar, and that's not the case. Changing things takes time, and like we tend to overestimate things from that perspective. For an example, I don't have the latest data, but I think 2016, if you think about US energy market, I think the most of the energy is being produced. The first energy source is gas, second energy source is coal, and I think after that it's hydro, and then it I think all the renewable sources, right? So there is like a regulatory aspect of it, right? That kind of so electrical industry is very highly regulated, right? So unless there is kind of a that drive, technology is there, I think solar has become so competitive. But if there is not that drive from the regulation side of it, the things will shift slowly. So talking about the technology that I think is, of course, the renewable, as I mentioned, is gonna come, but it would be a gradual move, right? So people will move from coal to gas and then to the renewable sources, to more sustainable sources. Other area that I think from the technical perspective is gonna impact a lot of I think hardware electrical side is the Internet of Thing, IoT, right? So the devices are becoming more and more connected. So now it's not about like, okay, as I mentioned earlier, attention to electrical energy efficiency. Earlier, it was just about operation, right, and getting the things done. Now it's becoming, okay, how can I optimize it when I'm driving from my work and coming to home? Can I turn my dishwasher on, or can I turn that coffee machine on when I'm just driving and I have it ready, or like I can set it up, in the morning when I am about to go to work. At the same time, I think. I recently this year, as a part of the program, I visited to China, right? And I saw automotive industry, the growth there, right? So like literally, so I was at the automotive plant at GM. So, GM is General Motors, right? So literally there were very less worker there. And essentially most of the whole line and the building of the car was being done by robots, right? So they had the G Fanuc and I think Delphi. I don't remember what was the name of the company, but there were robots that were actually doing all like building the doors of the car, and the person who was actually just putting the sheet metal on that machine, and the whole car was kind of being built there, right? So you can see that the trends are changing, and IoT has a big implication and making the whole manufacturing sector very efficient. It's $1 trillion market. So I definitely see a lot of growth of IoT. It's like a platform technology, right? So I see a lot of application of that. I think other industry, if I think in terms of industry, medical industry, energy industry, those are going through some major shift. Uh, Other industry that I can think is space, right? So, like a lot of race is going to kind of get that space supremacy. And I think, what is that called? Electronics, and kind of working on that aspect of the technical side of how can you make that for whole aeronautical system more efficient and effective is a trend, right? So I think those are the things that is gonna become more and more mainstream. And of course, electric vehicle is another big area, like building that charging network, and how can that whole infrastructure can become more sustainable is another area where I see a lot of growth.
So please continue with the presentation we like.
Okay. All right. So next, I'm just gonna share 5 of my favorite personal lesson with you guys, and then we'll move to questions. So the first advice that I can give you is explore fit, right? So what I mean by that is, constantly look for what are the new opportunity that is there, right? So get that exposure. So if you ask me, I think there was one question like, what would you have done if you had given a chance to kind of, start your career at BIT again, right? So I, I would have done more mistakes. I would have explored more. I would have got more exposure, right? So what I mean by that is like, I would have, at that time, even I was not aware, and maybe I would have given the GRE and I would have come to states earlier uh, than later, right? So one of the thing I'm showing here that I joined MOT, right? So actually at that time I was already have given my GMAT and I was about to apply for MBA degree. And my manager at Cummins just told me, why not you just go and attend one of the info session for MOT? And I just attended it, and that changed the whole story. It made total sense to me. I really love the technical field, and I wanted to kind of build my long-term career in a technical field. So, like that was a better fit for me than I would have chosen my career in finance or marketing, and MBA might be a better fit in that scenario, right? So it's just an example where I'm urging you all to kind of just constantly look for what are the opportunity. Go outside, attend tech fest, maybe go to IIT and present in a robotic competition, but always constantly look for opportunity. Maybe you should reach to me or other alumni from BIT and kind of get in touch with them, ask about their experience here, right? And like sometimes we kind of overestimate that we are so busy and you might not get the reply from us, but I'll say just reach out, always explore fit all the time and see what makes most sense for you. My second learning would be aim high and take small action, right? So uh, what most people think about when they think about success and failure is a linear process, right? Where you think, okay, you kind of become successful or you fail. But if you think about it, successful people know it's a very messy process, and it's nothing closer to being linear, right? So you kind of fail many times. It's a very dynamic thing, and you kind of keep trying until you succeed, right? So and when you take you always try to aim high, but at the same time you build your confidence by taking small actions. So always focus on those small action that is in your control and kind of work towards it. I think this is also a very important point. Uh, have fun and create memories. Like the time that I had in BIT Jaipur was one of like most enjoyable time I had in my life. Means we had less responsibility at that time. We are more free. This is one of the picture, and if you think this is the ugliest picture that I have of me, you're totally wrong. I have actually had a Gajini haircut when I was in BIT Jaipur. So, so this is a picture from Goa, right? And we all went as a team, and we actually, after graduating from BIT Jaipur, we actually went afterwards also there. And like build those great friendship with people in your class, seniors. And I think I'm most active in the BIT like alumni group than any other group right now. So I will say this is very important. You are in Jaipur. That's a really beautiful place. We used to go at Nahargarh. We used to drive there. I used to have that enticer bike, and I still have fond memory from that. Like, like I used to drive around, and I actually did a lot of time triple E's in there. So a lot of great memories, and it's not only about building those memory, it's also about building those long-term relationships. That's your support network. When you need that help, you can always rely on your friends. Like one of the question that you guys asked was, how that the BIT network helped me. Actually, there were people from my BIT batch that were here before me, and I reached out to them, and they actually financed a portion of my education when I was going through University of Michigan, and I took a leap of faith and I went there. But like deciding, I actually had a offer for my master's from Carnegie Mellon, but it was for an energy course. And one of my alumni friend, she suggested me, you should go for more generic course. It will open more opportunities for you in states when you were looking for job, and it made total sense, and actually had like a broader application when I went for electrical engineering. But that BIT network really helped me all the way along, and it is still helping me today also. So have fun and create those beautiful memories. My second last takeaway is care for something and be excited. Like when I was doing my MOT program, and I got the best captain award for my project, and it was related to back pain. I had that personal experience when I was working back. Uh, I was studying in BIT, and when I was working back in Reliance in India, right? So it really impacted my day-to-day well-being, and that really, I cared for that fact. And then the truth is, like no matter what you do in your life, you will always, you know, come across many challenges in your life. And if you are not willing to, be persistent when you face those challenge, and if you don't care for that fact, you will give it up. And that's why, that caring will actually keeps you going. Where do you derive meaning? What is your why you are doing something, right? So, and that's what, you know drive me to kind of build that standing desk project, starting my entrepreneurship journey that I'm currently working on my spare time. And I'm developing a prototype and kind of trying to uh, work for my company, right? So it's again part time, but I care for it, and that's something that gets me excited. So I think that is very important. Like you always find something, it could be totally different for you. Maybe it's something else that derives meaning in your life, right? So think about what do you care about, what gets you excited, and why you want to do it. And like usually they say, like for the capstone project, it takes around 120 hours to complete that capstone project. I have spent like more than 500 hours on my capstone project. And if I wouldn't have that drive, I would have stopped and I would have done the mediocre job. But that caring actually get me going. And now we are coming to my last point here. All right. So my last point here is take ownership. It is your story. Like you own your own career. Means if you think there was something valuable out of the things that I said, take it. If it's not, find something else in your life, right? But the whole point is, it is your job to reach out to professor, find what are the opportunities. You have the information, right? Information is a great equalizer, right? So you have all that information at your tip. Look for it, knock the door. If it does not open one time, try 10 times, right? But you take ownership of your own career, of your own journey. It is your life, right? So if you need advice, reach out to me or reach out to other people. Reach out to friend, reach out to teacher. There's a whole support system available for you, but you need to drive that. You need to take that ownership and write your own story. All right, that's all I had. I hope that was helpful for you guys.
So definitely that was very helpful. And
uh, but you see me, I cannot see you guys. All right, that's okay. We'll keep going.
Alright. So, sir, my question to you is about personal branding. Since we talked a lot about hard work, and but we all know that visibility work and smart work is also very important. So, how do you build a brand out of yourself in the competitive environment that we have?
Uh, that's a good question. Let me think about it in a second. Yeah, of course, like you carry your personal brand, right? That is as much as true as anything else, right? And I honestly, if you think, uh, I'm more driven, as I said, like caring and excitement is most important thing, and that's where I derive my meaning, and that is my brand, right? So a lot of time, uh, I try to focus more on the quality and the work that I do, and let that speak for me. As so, that's my primary way of building my branding, right? So, and second thing is, of course, is your social network, LinkedIn. Although I'm not very active, to be honest with you, that is actually one of my weakness, that I'm not very active on the personal branding side of it. But I definitely think that you again own your own career, right? So think about what are the things that really matters to you. How can you project those things? Where do you wanna build your network? But I think LinkedIn is an excellent resource where you can kind of not only get inspired from people in your field, but you get exposure from people from different field, but also kind of you build your own brand, right? And I would say get involved in other things beyond your studies, right? Get it involved into the volunteer work. It will give you a different perspective in your life. And not only it will give you a different perspective, but it will build a broader brand that you are carrying around you.
Alright. So, can you please open the last slide that we had in the presentation, because we're having some issues with the screen and the
Yeah,
camera. Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
yeah, I don't know. I cannot see you guys, so it's kind of little.
Yes, sir, we're having this issue with our camera.
Shall we try calling again, or shall we just keep going?
Yes, sir, we should, I think we should call again.
Mm-hmm.